Before he was the CEO of the most agent-centric brokerage in the world, Leo Pareja was a 19-year-old real estate agent with no roadmap and everything to prove. But we're not talking about titles here today. We're talking about what he's rewriting: culture, belonging, and leadership, and what that actually looks like in the real estate industry today. Leo, welcome to Built to Belong. I'm so excited for the conversation.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited too.
So I want to talk about, take me back to when you were 19, right? No roadmap, immigrant background. You were left to figure it all out. What did belonging, or the lack of at that time, look like for you in that season of your life?
Well, the reason I ended up in real estate was the first time I experienced my proverbial cheese being moved. So I actually applied to college to be a graphic design major. I was being recruited in high school by companies like AOL and WorldCom that no longer exist.
Yeah.
And for the folks who didn't live through that season of American history, we talk about that great financial crisis quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But there was a massive bubble that popped in the year 2000 with the tech bubble. In parts of, they call it the Silicon Valley, the East, in the DC area, is where America Online was founded, and a whole bunch of other tech hubs, which are, by the way, 80% of the internet of the world still goes through that area. But that first tech bubble was massive, like huge crashes in valuations. Broadcast.com that Mark Cuban sold for like $5 billion within 18 months went to zero. Mm-hmm. Pets.com famously went IPO and then crashed. That was my real first experience, and stuff outside of my control really shifted. I read a book and got obsessed with real estate. It was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which I think gets the credit, but it was really the Cash Flow Quadrant. It was the sequel that first exposed me to leverage of people, time, and money. And I made a decision I wanted to be in real estate. And that was my first time kind of seeking stuff out, because I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. No one in my family had been an entrepreneur. And I showed up to a real estate investor association meetup group. And that was probably my first experience in just like finding the tribe. Mm. And the cool thing about humans is we're a tribal species. And some tribes we're born into and others we choose to join. And so, I've been a part of very strong knit communities by choice. So I first joined kind of the investor world and got a license, and very quickly realized that I like selling real estate. It was the first time in my life I had been able to make, like, my first commission was probably as much money as I'd made waiting tables in the previous 6 months. And I just wanted to be a sponge and learn from as many people as I could. And that was probably the first time, like, joining a brokerage and saying, okay, I'm wearing a jersey. But then the real cool part about organizations is you find subgroups, right? So you could all be part of the same brokerage and then be, have affinity towards a certain group. For me in real estate, the first one was Pride and RF, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, where I found this belonging that I didn't know I would have enjoyed so much. But it was, where you have common interests, like, hey, how do we help a specific group who's probably underrepresented to find a path to something as powerful as homeownership?
Yeah.
But the belonging I found is really in appreciating and articulating the value proposition economically, right? Where I think most groups that go at it from, I will call it the social justice warrior perspective, lose a lot of ground and opportunity, because I don't think most people respond to, like, give me a seat because I said so, versus, hey, did you know that in 2025, household homeownership rates would have dropped if it wasn't for Latinos?
Agreed.
The only reason we grew in household formation and household percentages was because of the Latino population. So that is a completely different conversation with someone as an opportunity. And then again, fill in the blank on anything you want to talk about. But that's belonging has been an interesting kind of journey for me. But just understanding the economic opportunity of any subgroup to me is super interesting.
And for the longest, as the only Latino CEO across the industry, that comes from home. Your servant time with NAREP, serving the Latino communities. I know that, you and Ariana are both, children of immigrants. How did that shape the way that you see opportunity and community and what you owe to the people around you?
Well, I think everyone has a unique point of view, right? And I think that's part of, appreciating other people's perspective. So two people will, this is a super interesting thing I've learned, that when law enforcement is doing an investigation on some crime or anything, and they were to interview 5 people, a telltale sign of collusion is when people actually tell you the same story. So if there's even a car accident and you have 5 different people who saw it, you should get pretty different versions of what happened. And it could be as simple as height on perspective of which way they saw the accident. Some people could say the one person started the fight because, it probably reminded them of a parent and it triggered them in a different way. Right. But when 5 people repeat the same version of what happened, it's actually almost a telltale sign of collusion, which is super interesting because when you don't have diversity of point of view, you get stuck in echo chambers. Right. And so, as someone who didn't get here till I was 12 and, we didn't have grandparents who had owned real estate in this country, you can buy a house with 3% down, coming from Latin America, you need 40% down. So there's that educational gap that you can solve for people.
Yeah.
And it's, super unique to your own experience. And then having that information and knowing that there's a gap in the cultural information creates an opportunity, right? Because just by teaching others that, you create an opportunity to feed yourself and help others achieve the dream of homeownership. Is a pretty cool kind of intersection.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And I can just hearing you talking about it, I can tell that your background and having that experience coming into America, that belonging is a much deeper rooted feeling for you versus someone who didn't have those same experiences. Because the reality is you're right. It could cost people a 40% down payment versus coming here where it's, 3.5%, and affords them the ability and closes the gap for our Latino communities to have accessible and affordable housing. And that sense of responsibility that you had just named, it sits on top of one of the most staggering numbers across the industry right now. You were just talking about Latino. The 2025 Hispanic home ownership report it was 100% of homeownership growth attributed to Latinos, 441,000 net new homeowners. And they, on an average, are the youngest demographic buying houses, 8 years younger, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What does that number mean for you, not just statistically as a CEO, but personally?
Well, the interesting part is I was on the national board when we created that report. So I was I was part of creating the top 250 and creating the state of Hispanic home ownership. And it came from a place of hey, let's not placate to anybody. Let's not have our hand out. Let's actually educate. And because I like directionally accurate bets, right? So if you just look at a couple years of sequential census data, you can see that all the growth of this country is coming from Latino household formation. And so then you look at the data, Latinos get married younger, and tend to have more kids, right? So household formation is the biggest driver for real estate purchases. Yeah. And so it's just a very kind of obvious sequential opportunity. And the interesting part of even not belonging to that one group that we happen to be talking about is it's still an economic opportunity, even if you don't belong to that group.
Yeah.
Many times I've been talking to agents who are like, hey, I'm 65. Does that mean I have to learn Spanish? Absolutely not. What that means is that you could be in Minnesota that has an exploding Mexican population. And you could proactively attract some up and coming Latino agents who don't have a mentor that can teach them the business if you're highly successful or haven't found one. And you can help bring them along from an education standpoint and selfishly participate in this untapped market you would not have had access to.
The people that are serving that community is positioning themselves ahead of the market, at least in the next decade. Because you're right, it's the largest market share. And it's silly not to attend and serve for those communities, considering they're the overwhelming majority by a lump sum.
Yeah, but again, that's the opportunity is there's ways to participate even if you're not part of a group. And again, fill in the blank on any group, right? Like the single women outperform single men as purchasers in 2025.
They did.
Right? It's like one of the largest, fastest growing groups. And so I think a lot of us get stuck in, I don't know how it applies to me, versus like, okay, there's an opportunity to partner with someone to have this pathway into adding a new business sector. And again, getting outside of specific groups, but like investors. Investors were 30% of all home sales in 2025. And they were small investors, meaning less than 10 properties total in their portfolio. And so I would tell anyone who's doing real estate in any market, take all the transactions that closed in the county you serve, or counties or state, and then just be hyper aware of what's going on. Like, is your investor mix 30%, like I said, at a national statistic, or is it 2%? But if it's 30%, the first question is, was 30% of your business investor? And then go on down the line with any subgroup, whether it's type of transactions, like investors versus owner occupant, to demographics, because there could be an opportunity, whether it's adding a team member with an expertise, or is like, look at on a 5-year scale, it's like, oh, this is a straight line in that direction. I probably need to figure out how to capture some of that business.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, like, you don't have to be that specific demographic to serve, because one of the things that we know is that when your business is built on relationships compound. And allyship, I mean, that's how I grew that organization, was through connecting with people and people growing and those relationships compounding. For us, as the most agent-centric brokerage, what responsibility does eXp have to make sure that our agents that we serve are given, that are equipped with the community, that are supported and are seen?
Well, I think, again, I always go back to pure expanding the opportunity pie.
Yeah.
Right? What I appreciate about One EXP and having different groups, and I use it as a recruiting tool, is when I'm talking to a group who, let's say, a 50-person team in any one part of the United States, that's somewhat homogeneous. And even your team could be somewhat homogeneous. And I'm talking to a large team that could be somewhat homogeneous. And it could be something as simple as, hey, everyone on the team's, average age of mid-40s, which, by the way, statistically, the average age at EXP is 42.9. So it's like 43, which is exactly how old I am, funny enough. But let's say you have 2 agents who are 20, right? They might not have a lot in common with everyone in their 40s, because they're probably married with kids, going to soccer and martial arts on the weekends, versus they're going out and they're in a different season of life. But when they can join a group like Young Professionals Network, and then they have other people in the thousands to say, hey, who else is in their year one? I don't know how to file my taxes because I've never been self-employed. I've had a W-2 before this. Like, I don't, like, is there a, CPA firm, or does Quicken work for this, or do I go to Jackson, whatever? Or, someone in the group is military and they don't have anyone else on the team who's military, and they want to go all in on VA benefits. You then have a group like the Mill Network, where you can actually talk to people who have a specific background in that. And again, same with the Latino group, the African American, and any of the groups, I think, give us this larger ecosystem to find commonality. And that could be such a powerful network effect that you, in your specific town, may not feel, whether it's in the brokerage, on the team, or even in your county, because there may not be that many people that you could create that relationship with.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that we talk about too with One EXP, and I love that you had brought that up, is the agent attraction point. People don't join companies. People join people. And they join because of one of 2 things. It's alignment and compensation. They know they're going to make more money with you. And then an alignment in culture, meaning they see themselves in you. One EXP we're giving them the tools, the systems, the relationships, and the leadership development, not just to grow as an agent at EXP, but to grow as a leader across the industry. Because one of the things that EXP understands, one of the things that we talk about, you rewriting the way that we do culture, is that we understand that culture is not at a macro level. We don't just slap the word culture and expect everyone to fall in this specific category. We have culture, right? Collaboration, collaboration over competition, those things, but we also create subcultures that are built by agents for agents. And there are so many testimonials of agents' lives being changed from not just their income, but their relationships. And just it ties around, it's your production tool, it's your agent attraction tool. And ultimately, without culture, you don't have retention, right? And I love that we talked about the numbers to it too, because when you back it by data, it's no longer a matter of social justice or opinion. It is cold facts. And when you have that, you take out the political vitality out of diversity, and we make it something where everyone is on board because they're like, oh yeah, belonging makes sense. But we're like, let's belong, but let's make some money too, right? And you talk about a lot of data. So with the Pareja Foundation, the one that you and Adriana had founded, this is for, the foundation, and it created scholarship programs for women and minorities in tech. Where does the data end and the humanity begin for you?
Well, early on in my journey, I decided, and then when I met Ariana, we had made similar decisions that we wanted to give back. And the super interesting part of my giving journey was when I was 23. That's the first time I made money during the financial run-up, and then lost it all. And I had this aha where it's like, tomorrow will never be here. And we both signed up to be mentors with Big Brothers Big Sisters. And that was a super interesting experience because it was first of all, it was amazing, but it was the first time I actually experienced that concentrated giving to me is way better than kind of like writing a check. And so you don't have to have any money. You just can share skill sets and experiences that can significantly change someone's life.
Yeah.
And so what we did with the foundation is like, hey, how can we give one specific person a scholarship and upskill them in a meaningful way? And so we partner with a coding school and helped folks without getting a college degree go from $40,000 or $50,000 to $80,000, $90,000, $100,000. And then one of the other programs we designed is a financial literacy program. We partner with Miami-Dade College. We teach it a couple times a year. But it actually came from when we had our tech business, and we had young folks who made great money, and they would have a brown bag lunch in with the CEO, and they would just ask me whatever they wanted. And it organically turned into what they dubbed adulting with Leo. And it would basically like, hey, what's a credit score?
Yeah.
How do I calculate it? How do I get it to go up? What's a FSA? What's an HSA? What's a 401k? What's a Roth? And so it slowly became a course, a financial literacy course that I would do with well-educated, highly paid young people. And that's where we said, okay, we probably need to turn this into a course that is for everybody. And so we teach it through Miami-Dade College virtually, and hundreds of people take it every year.
Yeah. And it's incredible the amount of impact that you're able to make. It's every sector across what you do, across the multiple companies that you've invested in, and just like your work. I think it's so important because a lot of times when people see you, they see the highlighted reel, right? They don't see when you were plateaued at 20 to 30 homes, like in your 20s, and then you had dipped and hit the 7 homes because everything crashed and you had to sell all of your assets because you were stuck in a bind. And it wasn't until you went through that to get to the breakthrough. So it just makes it more human when it comes from someone who's so open about their mistakes, or not even just mistakes, your experiences, that those seasons of life that you go through that really sharpen who you become. And I think empathy and just the way that you give back exponentially shows. So, and I love that. And it ties it back because we talked a little bit about 1EXP and how belonging is not just a checkbox, but it's a tool. Like it's a growth tool. For someone who's still skeptical about that idea, can you sell me the idea? Like, how is community a growth-driven strategy?
Well, yeah, you said it earlier. Companies are collections of human beings, right? I think that we are living proof that people can copy business models, right? I feel like every week I find the next EXP,
Yeah.
right? Which is the model. Compensation, splits, technology stack, that can all be replicated. But at the end of the day, you join a tribe of people. And so belonging can be multiple layers, right? It's the company culture, the subgroups in your local market versus the national footprint. And that's all it is. And so most of the time when I'm talking to people about attraction for the company, I've actually boiled it down to a simple sentence, which is, can I take you from X to Y? And it's very important in the sense that I think too many people try to fill in the gaps for somebody else. It's like, hey, let me tell you about this great company because because of all these great features, and you start feature selling. And most people may not be interested or not have a high priority around a certain thing that's important to you. And so if you encourage people to ask just questions, right? Like a perfect example, say if you're talking to someone who sells 60 homes a year as a solo producer, and you then jump to the conclusion, be like, let me show you get to 100. And that person at 60 deals a year is hanging on by a thread, and they're working 80 hours a week, and their partner's threatening to leave them, and their health's out of whack. They're like, you do want me to die? Like 100 will kill me.
Put you over the edge.
I have zero interest in getting to 100 transactions. But if you start asking questions like, hey, what would have to change in your life if we were sitting together 3 years from now and you just smiled at me and said, it worked out better than I thought?
Yeah.
Right? Then they answer the question for you like, oh man, I'd love to work 40 hours a week and make the same kind of money.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up question would be like, okay, cool. What percentage of properties that you sold last year were buyers versus sellers? And then they'll probably say 80 or 80-20. Like, okay, if we just shift out one thing, we just go from 80% sellers to 20% buyers. Statistically, they take a third of the time. And you have way more control over your schedule because you can normally schedule that in a more controllable time and you're not having to drive them around for 6 months in the backseat of your car, right? So if you ask the correct questions about what somebody's goals are, you can then frame it into, hey, okay, cool, you're at 60. Let's take you to 60 on half the hours. And all of a sudden, the potential value proposition could completely shift it.
And that feels more organic too, right? Because you're not having to sell nobody. I firmly believe that your success is directly proportional to your ability to problem solve for others, to build relationships, and to consistently propel those relationships forward. Like when we attract agents, we're not talking about what EXP has to offer as far as feature. The one thing that nobody can replicate is our culture. And then we have the data to prove it. Some of our groups are either have never been created across the industry, like Indigenous Group or the Middle East Network, or the ones that we do have that are popular, like Young Professionals. I think we are now close to, if not the second largest across the United States. We have the largest senior network. We have internationally the largest Pride network across the industry. Like these are huge breakthroughs on culture because we're doing it differently. So across 83,000 agents over 20 countries, one EXP is comprised of over 50,000 agents right now. That's huge. How do we understand how to build at scale with culture without getting lost in translation with the number and the size?
So I read a lot, psychology and how people work. And again, we have 83,000 plus agents. I have 2,200 plus employees. I've come to the conclusion you can't do one-to-one with that many people, right? So what happens with leadership is you empower different groups. There's a great book called Tribes that talks about how kind of everything starts breaking down after 150 people. And so you create a system that allows for organic leadership. And I'll quote Glenn Sanford, who told me our company is an experiment in distributed leadership, right? And you come from the military, which has a very hierarchical system that is non-organic as it gets. The beautiful thing about the way we're structured, because of how RevShare works, I call it almost like asset light franchising. So if you choose to participate, there's no long-term contract, but then there is a economic flywheel that reinforces that leadership. And so we invented that and we've perfected it. But I think that same level of leadership that evolves translates to everything we do. And so we're not uncomfortable with someone showing up and saying, hey, I'm going to lead, and whoever wants to come can come with me. And I don't think it's as organic in other companies. So it doesn't surprise me when we launch an initiative and it kind of self-organizes rather quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had just named something specifically that I see a lot in One EXP, and that is the economic flywheel. We don't pay our agents any additional dollar incentives to be leaders or ambassadors for these groups, but we've demonstrated the business outcomes so fundamentally clear that we have 35 executive leaders that report to us, and all of them have had an increase, like net dollar payment. They're closing more deals. They're establishing their authority in their market. They're genuinely making a broader impact on agents. And one of the things that we talk about is that authenticity is the highest form of currency. We're leveraging your authenticity to storytell and to create that impact. And ultimately, they're representing the consumer better. They're representing EXP better. They're building better and more quality relationships within the organization. And so I love that. We have thousands of testimonials where agents came here feeling lost and saying, I lost everything. I don't know what happened. Just at the Houston rally, we had a One EXP panel, and we talked about trauma, trials and tribulations that builds the leaders that we are, and how the uncurated version of us is ultimately going to be the thing that connects with more agents. And a man called me after and was like, hey, I heard your panel and it really hit home for me. I just wanted to share my story with you. Year ago, got hit head on, going 75 miles an hour on a highway, head on collision. My whole family was in the car.
Oh my God.
We lost everything. Family is still alive. The guy died coming in on impact, but he was like, as a man, having to provide and protect for my family, it is hard for me to be vulnerable about this. He's like, we're all still struggling internally with these wounds. He's like, I didn't know there was a community for me to plug into this, because he was like, it's just been so hard, like as a male. And because of that conversation, we're building a men's mental health campaign in June to specifically advocate for our communities. So like you said, it's an economic flywheel where we're benefiting on every single line. Every conversation we talk about, it always goes back to you being a dad, because that's one of the things I love so much about you, is just how you prioritize your family and what you do to also let us know that we can also prioritize our families as well. I want to know, like, how has fatherhood, you've always wanted to be a dad for as long as you can remember, how has fatherhood shaped the way that you lead, and what do you want your kids to see and to know when they look back at the legacy that you're building?
So the cool part about my journey is I've had success and lots of failure. The thing I'm hyper aware of is the role I'm playing is a role, right? So like, this is a jersey that won't be forever, and I'm not going anywhere. No need to take that in a different direction.
You're gonna clip it.
But the reality is, like, I saw my father have an amazing career professionally, but he retired in like 20 years ago, and like, no one cares anymore.
Right.
The company he worked for no longer even exists. Like, it shut down. But his grandkids know him, right? And his son knows him. And so I'm hyper aware that we're all going to die. And there's, kind of this quote that I think people can get disheartened of, but like, in 100 years, no one's going to remember you, because no one who spent time on planet Earth will be there. And the super, visceral one is like, name your great grandparents, right? Nobody, for the most part, can't. Might be different because of social media. Like, there's probably a pretty accurate record of who we were. But like, my super simple North Star is, I want my kids to think I was a good human being.
That's it. I mean, and ultimately that's all that matters, right? And how present you are in their lives as they're approaching their teen years is fundamental, right? Most parents, they reach to that teenager age where then the kid starts, oh, I don't want to be around dad no more. That's not cool. But like, because of how present you are now, I have a very good feeling, especially your daughter as your best friend. I feel like you guys are just going to grow alongside. Like, you guys grow through life together. Like, this is a journey together. There isn't a separation from that. And so, I know they already see that in you.
And it's been interesting, because for both my kids, it's completely normalized that dad and mom speak on stages with thousands of people watching.
Yeah.
Right. And so my daughter now sings in front of hundreds of people at a time, and she's 11. And for her, it's like completely normal.
Right.
But I also think, like, you can Someone gave me the advice a long time ago to get my kids into expensive sports they can't do without me, because then extends the ability. Like,
Yeah.
can't go skiing without me at 17. My daughter scuba dives, and my son's going to start next year, and so like you can't take out a boat and go diving without me. So there are tips and tricks that I've learned where it's like, hey, and it could be anything. It could be camping, it could be hunting, it could be something that normally requires me to still be involved, versus like just bike riding. You can just take off down the street. But the cool part, speaking of the last rally we were both at, I've had several men come up and give me a hug and say, "You've normalized for me prioritizing my kids," which I don't think most men see that.
No.
Right? Where I have no qualms. Like, I'm going to leave as soon as I get off stage because I want to get home and put my kids to bed. I have dinner with absolutely no one in Miami, right? Like, it doesn't matter who's in town. We can have breakfast, we can have lunch. It's not about being disrespectful. It's just like, I have a finite amount of time that I can do certain things with them.
And it's fundamental that you have those boundaries in place, because it keeps you regulated. It keeps your family
100%.
together.
Yeah.
Like, people will erode their health because they put out too much like that. So I love that. And I want to take us back to, as we close this out, one of the beginning questions. You know, your birthday's in June, right?
Yep.
You'll be 44 then. You're 43 now. CEO, one of the most fastest growing brokerages. You know, we talked about what belonging meant to you at 19. What does it mean to you now? All the trials, tribulations, experiences, ups, downs, wins, losses. Now, like, seeing it at a scale that you are. What does belonging mean to you?
It's finding your place in the world. And the interesting part is I've actually kind of pivoted my talk track in the sense that we're not for everybody, and you don't have to be for everybody. So I think belonging is kind of a decision you make into the tribe you find. But that's the other thing. You don't have to make things for all people, because then they become kind of bland and generic, right? And that's the wonderful experience you can have with a subgroup. For where I sit, I just want to create a platform that allows people to build whatever size dream they want. And that could be their individual personal goals or the community goals they want to develop themselves. And from my perspective, it's like, hey, how do we build this platform that transcends language groups, countries? I mean, we're in 29 countries. We operate multilingual with different customs, different, ways of selling real estate with vastly different business models, because that's how different countries operate.
Yeah. And one of the things that you taught me personally, Leo, is that if you can't find a seat at the table, build your own damn table. Build your own freaking table, like, and invite people with you, because the quality of people that you're going to bring in is far exponentially better than you having to contort and shrink yourself to try to fit in rooms that honestly were probably never meant for you anyway.
100%.
So to close this out, podcast is built to belong. In your own words, what does it mean to build something that people actually belong to? And what is the one thing you want every EXP agent to know about what is being built for them?
The one thing I want to get across, especially if you're going 0 to 1, is that you're never qualified until you do it. And I think that's a very interesting concept that we just don't internalize enough. You weren't qualified to walk. Like, if you watch a small child learn to walk, they don't fall once and give up.
No.
They just get back up, but it's just get back up and keep going at it. And that's how you find your belonging, right? You have to interact with many groups and feel that awkwardness of like, okay, this wasn't a fit. Let me keep going until I find my people.
Like you said, it's only temporary defeat until you accept it as permanent failure. And we talk about it's not who's the strongest, but who fights the longest. If you got a guy who's swinging on people outside the street, and he gets beat up every time, but he still keeps getting up, I guarantee you, the next couple of weeks, no one's gonna want to fight with him. Even if he gets beat up and he gets back up, it's just the want and the tenacity to keep pushing through and to continue to fall forward, because the people that we admire, the people that we work with at those levels have failed the most amount of times. I guarantee you that you failed more times in your career than most people freaking tried. Period.
I actually say that sentence.
Seriously? Okay, well, exactly. The great minds think alike. So it's very real. So if there's one thing that agents could at least take from this, as long as you don't freaking quit, you inevitably will achieve that definitive aim as long as you have it set out, and you will continue to attract and pull the right people. But it's also understanding when to let the right people go, right? And shedding off that weight. So, Leo, thank you so much. This was an amazing conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
To many more.